How's it going, folks? I'm Duz with Duzbit, and this is the brand new Tacx Neo Bike Plus by Garmin, the new and improved version of the original Neo Bike that came out over 3 years ago. And it comes with a lot of enhancements to the ride experience, like new shifters and brake levers, as well as a lot of other improvements that just make it generally just easier to use. But just like before, this is one of the most premium smart bikes on the market, offering a complete out-of-the-box solution for an interactive indoor riding experience that doesn't require you to take on or off your outside bike when you want to train like you have to do with a normal bike trainer. It's all just right here, ready to go whenever you feel like riding. Smart bikes have come out in recent years due to the popularity of indoor cycling really taking off as an alternative for having to take your bike on and off the trainer. And some people have even gone so far as to have a dedicated trainer bike that permanently sits on that trainer to kind of just avoid that inconvenience altogether. But with something like this provides an all-in-one solution that's easy to set up, provides a really good ride experience, and quite frankly, it looks stunning. I mean, I just have this sitting in my living room and I think it looks great. So in this video, I'll be going over everything that the Neo Bike Plus has to offer in terms of features, how easy it is to set up, all the new features of the Neo Bike Plus versus the original Neo Bike, as well as what I think about the ride experience and how accurate it is from a power accuracy standpoint. And if the information in this video does help you out at all, don't be shy about hitting that like button down below. It's a small little thing that you can do that'll help this video and the channel quite a bit, and I appreciate it. So just like the original Neo Bike, the Neo Bike Plus is a fully customizable interactive smart bike that works with pretty much any indoor cycling training software out there via Bluetooth or Ant Plus, from the ever popular Zwift, Tacx's own training app, Trainer Road, Ruby, whatever's your pleasure when it comes to indoor training software. And what makes this different than something like a spin bike or a Peloton bike is that it can automatically control resistance via that training software. So with something like Zwift, when you approach a hill and start climbing, it'll actually automatically increase resistance to kind of replicate what you'd feel outdoors. And what you may also notice too is this little special touch with the Neo Bike Plus versus some other smart bikes is that it even has these LED lights on the bottom that light up when you're riding and even change color based on the power that you're putting out. And for specs, the Neo Bike Plus can provide up to 2200 watts of resistance, which is a ton, by the way. So just for some perspective, I feel like I'm a fairly strong rider where I can hold sprints of like 1100 to 1200 watts for maybe just a few seconds. So this should provide enough power for like 99.9% of us out there. And it can also simulate a grade of up to 25%. The Neo Bike Plus is also completely customizable from a fit standpoint, so it can accommodate a large range of rider heights. And it's also customizable with 4 different adjustments for seat height, fore and aft for the saddle to replicate your desired seat post angle, as well as stem length or reach, as well as handlebar height. And you can adjust each of these down to the millimeter, so you can basically match the fit of your outdoor bike. The old handles on the Neo Bike Plus, they used to just be these long handles rather than these kind of like wing shape sort of things. So basically you kind of run into a situation where you'd be rotating one of these handles and actually maybe like knocking into another piece on the bike. But they've improved on these a lot with these new dual-sided levers or wing shaped levers where you can just keep on turning it without having to pull it and release it to keep on turning. Another thing that they changed too with these levers is that the notches, when you pull and release the lever, these are a lot closer together. So before, with the older levers, the notches, they could be really far apart. So what you could do is that you would tighten it down, you'd have it in this position, but then it'd be kind of like awkwardly sticking out. With the notches a little bit closer, you can kind of customize that so it's a little bit more flush. And then they also include set screws in addition to the lever. So if you want a cleaner look and don't plan on letting anyone else use your Neo Bike, you can totally go down that route as well. Another thing that they've changed with the Neo Bike Plus is that they've also narrowed the seat post area right here, which was a concern with the original Neo Bike. So where some people's thighs were actually rubbing a little bit right here. I didn't necessarily have any problems on the original Neo Bike, nor do I have any problems on the Neo Bike Plus. And I don't exactly have small thighs per se, but I did experience a little bit of thigh rub like right here. It really wasn't that much though. Oh, and then it also does come with a saddle, and in terms of comfort, it seems perfectly fine to me. It's definitely not as nice as something like an ergon saddle or a specialized saddle, but I put a lot of hours in this thing and it hasn't caused me any issues, but you can switch out the saddle with whatever you wish. And then they've also redesigned the crank arms quite a bit too, where you don't have to have a little pod to adjust the crank length like you had to do on the original Neo Bike. And then in addition to that, they also have 5 different crank lengths to choose from versus the 3 on the original Neo Bike. So now you have options for 165 millimeters, 167.5, 170, 172.5, as well as 175 millimeters. These new crank arms aren't necessarily as pretty as before, but at least you don't have to worry about losing that little adapter from before, and you also don't need to worry about any alignment or creaking. Another nice thing about the new Neo Bike Plus is that it has these brand new shifter brake levers, which are night and day much better than the previous generation. The previous generation levers were kind of odd where they just didn't look and feel like normal road bike levers, but these basically mirror what you'd find on an actual road bike. But along with the redesigned shifter and brake levers, they've also added the ability to customize the actual shift buttons to mirror either Shimano shifters, which is how it comes out of the box, as well as SRAM or Campy shifters. And all of this is customizable via the app. And then in addition to being able to customize the actual shift buttons, you can also replicate whatever kind of gearing that you want as well. And the actual feeling of shifting is really good here, where each shift is instantaneous. And they've also managed to kind of replicate that notched, kind of cha-chunk feeling that you get when you switch gears on your outside bike. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's quite realistic. And then in addition to the shifter buttons, there's also dedicated incline buttons, and these are for increasing or decreasing the resistance to replicate either going up or down a hill. But just note that those buttons are all about changing resistance on the flywheel. It actually doesn't change the angle of the bike like a gradient simulator. And then for these brake levers, first of all, they have a wonderful shape to them. They feel really, really good. But since this bike actually does freewheel just like an outside bike, these brake levers also do work just like an outside bike, but just note that these brakes don't really serve any function in an indoor cycling training software, at least for the moment. The Neo Bike Plus also comes with an integrated 4.5-inch LCD display, and this is super nice to have where it'll show your gearing, your power output, cadence, and speed. And what I found really nice about the display too is that the refresh rate is super fast. So like you can see here, as I increase power, that's a very smooth readout. And I think that's what's great too about the Neo Bike Plus is that you don't necessarily have to use it with a piece of indoor cycling training software if you don't want to. You can just hop on, start riding, start shifting, and all that good stuff. So like if a friend comes over, all they have to do is just kind of quickly adjust the fit, hop on, and start riding. And then above the display, you also have these built-in fans. And these fans are not gimmicky, by the way. They actually do work, and you can adjust the angle to get just that right position. So these will be really good, just a little bit more elegant solution if you don't want a fan on the floor. And the neat thing about these fans too is that the speed of the fan can actually be regulated by your heart rate zone or your power zone. So as you increase power, the fan speed will increase, and same thing goes for heart rate. Pretty cool. Oh, and by the way, if you don't want these fans, they also have an additional plate that you can use that'll kind of cover up this portion so it's a little cleaner look. And then below the display, there's a nice handy little tray where you can store your phone, gels, cookies, or anything like that. And they also have this removable cover, so that way if you spill any crumbs, you can simply take it off and wash it if it gets mucky. And then another convenience option with the Neo Bike Plus is that it has two USB charging ports located underneath the display. And again, this is really nice to have, where the worst thing we want is to have a training session be interrupted because your iPad is low on juice. And then in addition, being on the trainer is just a great opportunity to charge up your phone if you need to. And then for something kind of random where I didn't really know where in the video to place this is that you actually don't necessarily need to have the Neo Bike Plus plugged in to use it. So check this out, unplugged, go ahead and hop on. The lights work, the resistance works, Bluetooth and Ant Plus work, the shifting works, the display works, the fans even work. The only two things that I noticed didn't necessarily work with the Neo Bike Plus unplugged are the USB ports. They won't actually power anything. And then the downhill resistance, or the downhill simulation, pardon me, as well as the freewheeling also doesn't work. So why would you exactly need this? Well, let's say you had like a shed outside or something like that where there's no power. You could still totally use the Neo Bike Plus. And then before we talk about ride feel and power accuracy, I also wanted to talk about how easy it is to get the Neo Bike Plus set up out of the box. And it'll probably take like 30 to 45 minutes, I'm thinking. And they do recommend 2 people to set it up just because this thing does weigh 110 pounds. I was easily able to do it myself, but another person would have definitely come in handy. But basically it arrives in a very robust box that's about the size of a normal bike box, but a little bit wider. All the parts are packaged really well, and even if UPS is not so kind with the box, which was definitely the case with mine when it arrived, everything inside was perfectly fine. So Garmin's really done a good job with protecting all the parts inside. And it may look like a lot of pieces that are involved here, but it actually goes pretty quickly. So the first thing that you want to do is install the front legs, and you use 2 long Allen bolts to bolt it onto the main unit. And by the way, they include all the tools that you need to assemble the bike. Like, you'll actually have an extra set of 4, 5, 6, and 8 millimeter Allen wrenches once you're done here, which can be a nice bonus. And these are actually nice Allen wrenches, by the way. Next, you'll install the back legs again with 2 long Allen bolts. And then from there, we install the saddle, which is already attached to this piece that slides back and forth on the seat post to adjust the fore and after your saddle in relation to the cranks. From there, you'll need to install the handlebars onto the front of the bike using the same process as the saddle. You'll next install the fans to the front of the display, but again, if for some reason you don't want the fans and want a cleaner look, they also include the plate to replace it. And then you'll plug in the display as well as the fans if you choose to use those, install the included water bottle and cage, mount your pedals, and you're basically ready to go. And by the way, in addition to the included water bottle and water bottle cage, they also include a Tacx training towel, as well as a little sweat guard that'll go right on top of here that'll prevent sweat from dripping down on the frame. And then when it comes to ride feel, the NeoBike Plus and the NeoBike before it have an incredibly smooth feeling when riding, like it's buttery smooth since you don't have a traditional bike drivetrain. The road feel that they've been able to replicate using their magnetic resistance system is pretty astounding, where it's able to deliver a very realistic road feel in regards to the inertia that you would normally feel while riding a bike outside. And then in addition to that, the NeoBike and the NeoBike Plus can also provide downhill simulation. So basically this is when you're in your indoor cycling training software and you're going down a steep hill. It'll actually accelerate a little bit to kind of replicate that coasting feeling. And then another thing about the NeoBike Plus, the original NeoBike, as well as other NeoBike trainers, is that they can also simulate different road surfaces. And what I mean by this is stuff like gravel and dirt, where again, they can use that magnetic resistance system to replicate bumps and vibrations. And this is pretty cool from the standpoint of mixing things up and keeping things exciting, adding a bit more realism to riding indoors. Now, if you're used to riding a direct drive bike trainer, the NeoBike Plus actually can feel a little bit odd because it's just so smooth and so darn quiet because it doesn't have a traditional drivetrain. And then in terms of how silent it is, well, this will basically be about the quietest indoor riding experience that you can get. So when direct drive bike trainers say that they're virtually silent, that's very much true for the trainer itself, but then you have the sound of your bike drivetrain. And since this doesn't have a traditional drivetrain, all you'll basically hear is a slight whirring from the magnetic flywheel, as well as a little bit of freewheeling when you're coasting. And then for power accuracy, Garmin claims accuracy down to plus or minus 1%. And for the most part, it delivers on that front. And I've got quite a few rides on this thing, so let's go ahead and check out some data. So if we take a look at this ride here, crazy close from an average power standpoint compared to a pair of Favero Asioma dual pedals, which have proven to be some of the most accurate on the market. Now, I first want to zoom in a bit to show you an interesting quirk though with the power being reported on the NeoBike Plus before we dive in. And what you may notice is that the power being reported from the NeoBike Plus is smoothed a bit, and I have both devices I'm recording with just 1 second recording intervals. And with the Favero Asiomas, there's just more detail with the power being reported, so that's why the Asioma power looks a little bit jagged, where the NeoBike Plus is kind of this smoother wave. Even so, the NeoBike Plus does do a good job here, where on nearly every section of this ride, things look pretty darn good. However, the smoothing of the data does come to play though when it comes to quick accelerations or sprints, where it can throw off what's finally being collected. So if we take a look at these here, these are about 20-second long increases in power, and we see that there's a slight delay with the NeoBike in regards to power being reported versus the Asiomas, especially at the beginning. And by the way, the offset isn't just because the timestamps of the data files are off. I have actually matched the files via cadence as well as heart rate. So what the smoothing can do though is underreport quick changes in power. So like on these middle 2 sprints, not bad where they line up mostly. However, on these other 2, it doesn't quite catch the sudden increase as I started out, but it does catch the tail end as I held that higher output. And you may notice this more on extremely sharp sprints. So these are just some quick 5 to 8 second sprints. And this is where you may see that peak power output, if for a short period of time, may be underreported. And I think this all really has to do with the smoothing of the data versus the ability for it to actually measure power accurately, because we see that it will match at some point if we hold power for long enough. It's just that because it's smoothing out data, rapid changes may not be reflected. Now, when riding in sim mode with something like Zwift, the NeoBike Plus performs really well here, where I really like the responsiveness and things feel very natural to me in regards to how it replicates grades with resistance, and I find it to be a really good experience. Erg mode is a little bit of a different beast though with the NeoBike Plus, where I think that experience could be improved a little bit. So when you go to start an interval with the NeoBike Plus, the change in power can be a little bit drastic, like 2 to 3 seconds, where I think it was like 4 to 5 seconds, that'd be a little bit smoother transition in power. And you can kind of see that reflected here with each of these intervals, where I kind of had to overcompensate at the start of each interval, but then things smooth out. The other thing I noticed too is that if you deviate from your prescribed wattage, basically going over or under your prescribed wattage, the power output can kind of feel a little bit wavy. So when you go above your prescribed wattage, it actually does a really good job of elegantly dialing back the power so you can get back onto your prescribed wattage. But what I noticed is that if you drop below your prescribed wattage, it can take a little bit longer for it to recognize that change. And just like the start of an interval, when the power does kick back in, it's a bit too abrupt. And then for cadence, the NeoBike Plus measures this virtually, and I tested the heck out of this. And as you can see here, with tons of changes of cadence here with all sorts of ladder drills that I did, absolutely stunningly perfect, really good to go here. Oh, and then one more thing I wanted to mention too is that the Neo Bike Plus can also measure left and right pedal power balance, which you can use for pedaling analysis to help you with better technique and hopefully develop a more efficient pedal stroke. So the new Neo Bike Plus, it's not necessarily a brand new bike versus the original Neo Bike, but all these updates are really welcome, and it kind of just polishes the experience and makes it more convenient to use. And then in terms of if this bike is actually right for you, well, if you want a simply fantastic looking smart bike that can literally sit in your living room if you want, all while being able to provide a super quiet and smooth ride, it's certainly worth a look. And in addition to that, because of the customizability with fit, it can work for many people in your household without every person needing to switch out their bike on a single direct drive bike trainer. Anyhow, if you have any questions about the Neo Bike Plus that I didn't cover in this video, make sure to leave those in the comment section down below. And on your way down there, if you found the information in this video useful, do me a favor, just quickly hit that like button, and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos that are coming soon. In the meantime, happy riding, and we will see you in the next video.